Chapter 5. Fire and Ice. Justin leaned against the cold basement wall, feeling the chill seep into his back as he took in the horrific scene. Jessica's lifeless, frozen form lay before him, her face pale and still. His mind spun with regret, guilt, and the unbearable burden of the decisions that had led him to this moment. He tried to shake off the suffocating dread, convincing himself he'd come this far and that it was too late to turn back. But the truth weighed on him heavily. He was in way over his head, and he couldn't see a way out. For a brief moment, he was overcome with an urge to undo it all, just to go back and make different choices. But his mind, ever cold and calculating, reminded him of what he had to do if he wanted to keep his newfound freedom. He muttered bitterly under his breath, "No one ever tells you what freedom costs." As he reached for Jessica's phone again, hoping his last text to Emily would buy him a little more time, the darkness swallowed the room, leaving only the dim beam of his headlamp cutting through the blackness. The power outage brought on by the storm was all-encompassing, a thick, inky blackness that matched his mood. Justin's jaw clenched as he realized he'd have to work quickly in the dim light to get through the grisly task in front of him. He trudged back upstairs to gather candles, just as he'd done a dozen times with Jessica when they'd first moved into the house. Back then, they'd enjoyed these moments, curling up by candlelight, talking about the future. It all felt like a cruel mockery now, as he scattered the candles around the house to create a semblance of light and warmth. He lit each one, the soft glow casting shadows that danced along the walls, reminding him of the fires his grandfather had built while telling stories around the campfire. Those memories had once been comforting. Now they felt distant and hollow. The gentle flicker of the candlelight illuminated his reflection in the mirror. He stared at himself, forcing a crooked smile as he muttered, "I like your shirt. Red looks so good on you." He barely recognized the man staring back. The darkness in his eyes, the sharp lines of tension etched into his face. It was as if he was looking at a stranger who'd crossed too many lines to return to any semblance of normalcy. Trying to focus, he headed back down to the basement, taking the headlamp and flashlight with him. He was almost back to the freezer when Jessica's phone chimed in his pocket, startling him. Emily had responded. His hand trembled as he pulled it out, expecting a simple confirmation, but her words stung like a jolt of electricity. "Sure, I'll be there first thing in the morning. I thought you were dead in bed." Justin smirked darkly. "Funny you'd say that," he murmured, typing back a quick response, something Jessica might have said about a lingering cold. He turned his focus back to the problem at hand. Jessica's body lay there, unmoving, her once vibrant spirit reduced to a grim reminder of the life they'd once shared. He crouched down, the light from his headlamp casting eerie shadows over her frozen features, and gently unbound her wrists. A strange pang of remorse gnawed at him as he looked at her face, lifeless yet somehow still accusatory. He found himself whispering, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." Cradling her body, he rocked back and forth, the weight of his actions finally sinking in. His mind, once so calculating and detached, was now flooded with memories. Her laughter, the warmth of her embrace, the way her eyes sparkled when she was happy. He couldn't remember the last time she'd looked at him with that light in her eyes. And now, he realized with grim clarity, she never would again. Just as he began to contemplate the darkness he'd invited into his life, he smelled smoke. At first, he thought he was imagining it, that maybe his mind was playing tricks on him. But the acrid scent grew stronger, and he looked up, noticing faint wisps of smoke filtering down from the ceiling. Panic surged through him as he jumped to his feet and sprinted for the basement stairs. The closer he got, the hotter the air grew, thickening with every step. When he reached the top, he was met by a wall of flames. Somehow, the candles had set fire to something, a curtain, or perhaps a paper left too close to one of the flames. The fire had already spread, consuming the hallway, licking up the walls and filling the house with an inferno. He tried to push through the door, but the intense heat sent him stumbling back. Heart pounding, he scrambled for the fire extinguisher, mounted by the stairs, nearly dropping it in his panic. He pulled the pin, aiming at the flames, but the fire seemed to only grow angrier, fueled by whatever it had already claimed. Thick smoke poured down into the basement, stinging his eyes and searing his throat as he coughed violently, gasping for breath. "Not like this," he choked out, desperately battling the flames that were now closing in on him. The fire roared, a relentless force that refused to be stopped, and his vision began to blur as smoke filled the room. He could barely see as he backed away, stumbling, feeling the walls grow hotter around him. His headlamp flickered, casting eerie shadows through the haze of smoke as he collapsed to his knees, exhaustion and smoke overwhelming him. As he sank to the floor, he closed his eyes, surrendering to the darkness. The roar of the flames grew distant, fading into silence as everything around him disappeared. The next sensation he felt was a sharp stab of pain as he came to in the hospital, his body wrapped in bandages, every inch of his skin raw and throbbing. The fluorescent lights above him were harsh and blinding, and the smell of antiseptic hung heavy in the air. Blinking against the brightness, he tried to focus, the world around him spinning as he attempted to piece together what had happened. "Sir, can you hear me?" A voice broke through the fog. An EMT leaned over him, his face a mixture of concern and professionalism. "You're a lucky man. We found you in the basement of your house." The fire department got there just in time. Justin opened his mouth to speak, but his throat felt like sandpaper. He could barely rasp out a single word. "Jessica?" The EMT looked at him with a strange expression. "No one else was found in the house, sir. The fire destroyed most of it. We're still investigating the cause." A strange emptiness settled over Justin as he lay there, staring at the ceiling. The house was gone, reduced to ashes. Everything he'd tried to hide, every trace of his past, wiped out by the fire. There was a bitter irony in it. He had wanted a fresh start, and now he had one, though not in the way he'd planned. He was alive, but everything he'd known was gone, swallowed by the flames. As he drifted in and out of consciousness, he realized he was now truly alone, stranded in a life he'd fought so hard to control. And for the first time, he felt a pang of fear at the emptiness that stretched before him, the cold, silent void that he had created with his own hands.